Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Andrew Yang, Joe Biden, and the three forms of interviews that have emerged that show three very important attributes of U.S. presidential primary Democrat candidates. All right, so I was listening to Tom over on Nerds for Yang, a fantastic channel. If you're not going there every day, you should be. Actually, I'll say frankly, a better channel than mine. That guy's awesome. He's really good. It's good to have people you can aspire to be as good as, right? All right, so but he was breaking down the numbers for the fantastic 8% national poll where Andrew Yang just crushed everybody but Biden, Sanders, and Warren. They're on the list. They're next. we'll knock them down soon off those high poll numbers. All right, but basically, Tom brought out something that I hadn't really thought of before, and he said Biden does not do interviews, right, at the macro level. He doesn't do so Biden trots out and does interview every now and then, but he does not give a lot of interview access. Right now, in the middle of the campaigns, he's not doing a lot of interviews, right? Last time he was on Stephen Colbert, and that interview felt incredibly teed up, right? And it looks like almost all his interviews are with very teed up, very cushy interview questioners, right? And so it really made me think, so basically Tom was saying, hey, Biden is not interviewing frequently, right? And I started thinking about interviews, and interviews are a huge part of why I'm into Andrew Yang. I had researched Andrew Yang quite a bit when I researched all of the U.S. presidential primary candidates back when there was only like 15 or 16, and Yang stood out like like a parking cone in the middle of an empty parking lot. Like, it was just so clear that he was the best candidate, right? But where I really started to really see the incredible potential of Andrew Yang was the Joe Rogan interview. And the Joe Rogan interview is long form, right? So let's talk about these three aspects of interviewing and how they can be a major differentiator. All right, so here we go. All right, long form interview, that's the Joe Rogan world, right? And literally like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of questioning and just, really jamming down and getting your questions answered, right? And then frequency of interview. Do you give access to lots of different interviewers? In the middle of a campaign, you should be, that's what the media is for, right? And there should be print. There should be print interviews. There should be podcast interviews. There should be video interviews. Like, you should be talking to cows in the middle of fields, man. Anybody who wants to interview, you should really be getting out there. There should be a high frequency of interviews for a U.S. presidential primary Democrat candidate in 2020. And frankly, there is not high frequency for Joe Biden, right? Now, I just talked about those frequencies and all those different forms. For Yang, he's got them. He is all over. I'm pretty sure Yang has done every single different weird type of interview I just talked about and talked to a cow in the middle of a field, right? Like, it's there. So, all right, long form, frequency. Last one, enemy territory. This is a big one, right? So what do I mean by enemy territory? Interviews in enemy territory. Well, there's a couple people who have done interviews in enemy territory. By far the most famous so far. So one, for the U.S. presidential primary Democrat primary race, right? What is enemy territory? Come on, it's Fox News, duh, right? So like, that's clearly it, right? So who has done interviews over on Fox News? Well, it's Sanders and it's Pete Buttigieg. Elizabeth Warren was famously asked and refused and said she would not go, right? But I think this is a major, major differentiator on interviews. Now, I'm almost positive Andrew Yang was never asked to do a Fox News town hall, right? But Pete Buttigieg did famously do a Fox News town hall. Sanders did a Fox News town hall. I watched them both. They were fantastic. I have to say, I did gain a lot more respect for Bernie Sanders because of that interview. It did show me that he's very honest, very genuine. And he's savvy, right? He was savvy then. Yeah. So like it raised my respect for him. And Pete Buttigieg That's huge going over there and doing that. I was incredibly impressed, right? So, interviews in enemy territories, all right? So let's talk about this differentiator, right? So I think this is a fantastic differentiator showing that Andrew Yang is clearly a better candidate than Joe Biden, right? Andrew Yang has done very frequent interviews. Biden is not doing frequent interviews. Andrew Yang has showed he can do long-form interviews. Joe Biden is not doing long-form interviews, right? And the reason why is you can't get that guy in a room and ask him 25, 35, 45 questions because you know you're going to get some weird story from 1935, 1945, 1955, and his handlers are like, oh my gosh, we can't have another corn pop story. It's a thing, right? It's a major issue, right? And then enemy territory, I think Joe Biden would be willing to do a Fox News town hall. And I also really think that Andrew Yang would be willing to do a Fox News town hall. I'll tell you right now, I think one of the reasons why you're not seeing a lot of Fox News town halls right now is when Buttigieg and Sanders went in there, I feel like Buttigieg and Sanders knocked Fox News around, man. They came out the winners, and Fox News came out the losers, and I think that's one of the reasons why you're seeing less of those Fox News town halls, because the Democrats are wrecking fools up in there. And I mean, how hard is that? Come on. All right, so basically, I think this enemy territory thing it's no points off of Biden, because I'm not sure if he was actually asked, but the long form and the enemy territory, I'll tell you right now, boy, I'm convinced. You put Biden on Joe Rogan would walk Biden into a wall. Joe Rogan's crafty. He pulls out some really, really interesting stuff from people, and I think he would just pull out the mess from Biden. And I think Biden's handlers know it. And there's no way you can go on Joe Rogan, right? There's no possible way. Andrew Yang went on Joe Rogan and just straight, threw it down. Mike dropped when he left. He did a fantastic job. People are still watching that interview, right? So long form. Now, why are these three types of interviews important? Why should we be using them as a differentiator to decide who we vote for? It's really important. It's three attributes that it shows us about the candidate. Capability. Long form shows capability. Can you flow? Can you take questions that come straight off the dome of another genius type person, right? Do you have mental endurance? Do you have mental focus, right? And frankly, with the big old pancake pile of gaffes that Biden has, that's a real question anymore, right? Willingness, right? If you are not, and that goes to enemy territory, right? Famously, Hillary Clinton would not go on Howard Stern and absolutely ignored and sidestepped almost all conservative branches of media, right? She didn't go on no Breitbart. She wasn't on Fox News, right? And, at the end, it was incredibly clear how willing she was to be president when she called half the people she needed to vote for her a basket of deplorables. It's a absolutely famous political catastrophe, right? And the reality is, I listened to Howard Stern, and he laid it out. He's like, I begged her to come on my show because I was like, hey, I got 30 million people you're not reaching, and you could definitely pull out 5-10 million voters out of this. You better get over there, right? And the reality is, it's amazing. It goes to how willing you are to fight and do the right thing, right? It's a big deal, right? And right now, with enemy, now I do think Biden would be willing to go on to Fox News if they had invited him. I don't think he ever said that he wouldn't. But here's the big one: Elizabeth Warren, man, she is making the same mistakes as Hillary, thinking she can insult opponent voters. Did we learn nothing from Hillary in 2016? It seems like Elizabeth Warren learned nothing. That's bad. That is very, very bad. All right. The last one is coalition. Can you build a coalition, right? And here's the thing. The Democrats with Elizabeth Warren, with Sanders, and with Biden. Right? No, actually, I'm sorry. I actually think Biden has some ability to build a coalition, about 1/4 of the ability of Yang, right? The reality is Biden's a savvy dude. Biden's biggest problem by far is his age and his health, right? And those are linked, right? So the reality is, but when it comes to coalition, right? Sanders, forget it. Forget it. You might as well put a hammer and a sickle in his hands, man. When you have called yourself a socialist for 30 years, you ain't going to be getting no red voters. Trust me. By the way, I know the irony of saying red voters after I just said hammer and sickle. The Democrats are very lucky to have blue. All right, so anyway, coalition, right? So and Warren, no coalition, absolutely no coalition. I'll tell you right now, every single Republican in America is going to look at Elizabeth Warren and they're going, "Oh, you're an incredibly intelligent, smart, hardworking, civic-minded, Ivy League lawyer author who is also a Washington insider, a Washington insider coastal elite who meticulously plans and has many scandals exactly like Hillary Clinton. Her political profile is a mirror of Hillary Clinton, right? And so Warren has no ability to build a coalition. And Warren's dodging the right's media outlets is showing she has no more ability, she has no more willingness to do what it takes to win, and no ability to build coalition. Right? So I think interviews, these specific 3 types of interviews, long form, enemy territory, and frequency, frequent interviews, enemy territory interviews, and long form interviews, this is where you see the strongest players. This is where you see the strongest candidates. And of course, the strongest candidate of them all is Andrew Yang. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.